My name is Frank Garrison, 38 years old, Staff Sergeant in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. For the past 14 years, I've dedicated my life to serving this country, frequently deployed to remote locations for 4 to 6 months at a time, building infrastructure, securing communications, and training allied forces from Afghanistan to Eastern Europe. My wife Rachel is 33, works as a nurse at Denver General Hospital. We have a 9-year-old daughter named Katie. Every deployment tears at my heart, leaving my family behind, but duty to country comes first. I work relentlessly, sending home 85% of my pay and combat bonuses, keeping only enough for basic necessities and the occasional care package for my girls. Yesterday, while stationed at a forward operating base near the Polish-Ukrainian border, our engineering mission was cut short by 2 weeks due to rapidly deteriorating weather conditions making helicopter resupply impossible. Instead of calling Rachel to spoil the surprise, I decided to fly home unannounced. My first chance to surprise my family in 3 years of deployments. After 18 hours of military transports and commercial flights, I landed in Denver at 5:30 a.m. Saturday morning. Heart pounding with excitement at seeing my wife and daughter after 4 months apart, I stopped at an all-night florist and bakery to grab roses and Katie's favorite chocolate cake. But the first thing I noticed pulling into our suburban driveway in Aurora was an unfamiliar black Silverado pickup truck parked in my usual spot. Colorado plates, but not one I recognized from our neighborhood or Rachel's hospital colleagues. Rachel never allowed strangers in our house when I was deployed. That was our ironclad security rule established after my second tour in Iraq. My training kicked in, and I felt that familiar tingle of situational awareness that had kept me alive overseas. Maybe it was her brother visiting from Phoenix or a colleague dealing with an emergency. I unlocked our front door quietly with my spare key, setting down my duffel bag in the entryway of our modest 3-bedroom ranch house. Immediately, I heard laughter coming from the living room, Rachel's voice mixed with an unfamiliar man's deep chuckle. She was giggling in that flirtatious way I remembered from our dating days, but hadn't heard directed at me in years. "Why don't you stay for breakfast? Katie's at her sleepover until noon, so we have the whole morning to ourselves." Rachel's voice carried that sultry tone she used to reserve for our intimate moments. I froze in my own hallway, roses still in hand. 14 years of military service had trained me to stay calm under enemy fire, but hearing my wife use that voice with another man felt like taking shrapnel to the chest. I set the flowers down silently and moved closer to the living room doorway. "I've been thinking about you all week, Rach. These Saturdays are the only thing getting me through my shifts at the plant." The stranger's voice was rough, working class, intimate in a way that suggested this wasn't their first private conversation. "I know, baby. I hate that we can only see each other when Frank's deployed. But he'll be gone another month, so we have time." Rachel responded with the kind of tenderness I'd been craving during our video calls from overseas. The word baby hit me like an IED explosion. This wasn't a chance encounter or friendly visit. They had an established relationship, complete timing around my deployment schedule, and clearly this had been going on for weeks, maybe months. My combat training kicked in. Instead of charging into that room like my heart wanted to, I forced myself to think tactically. Emotional decisions get soldiers killed, and right now I needed intelligence before action. I had to know exactly what I was dealing with, how long this had been going on, who this man was, and how deep this betrayal ran. I quietly retreated to the kitchen, my sock-covered feet silent on the hardwood floors. From there, I could hear them clearly but remain hidden. Through the breakfast bar opening, I caught my first glimpse of him, a stocky guy in his mid-30s with work boots and a flannel shirt. Looked like he'd come straight from a night shift. "Danny's been asking why I can't hang out on weekends anymore," the man was saying. "Had to tell him I picked up extra shifts." "Well, you're not lying." "These are definitely extra shifts," Rachel laughed, and I heard the couch cushions shift. Were they sitting closer now? My hands clenched into fists. I needed proof. Courts favor documentation, and if this was heading toward divorce, I'd need evidence. Slowly, I pulled out my phone and activated the voice recorder app. My hands were surprisingly steady. Muscle memory from years of handling sensitive equipment under pressure. Suddenly, I heard footsteps moving toward the kitchen. Shit, Rachel was coming this way. Heart hammering, I ducked behind the kitchen island, praying she was just getting coffee or water. The refrigerator door opened, bottles clinking. "Want another beer, babe?" she called out. "Yeah, thanks. Come back here quick, I missed you," his voice carried from the living room. The fridge closed. Rachel's footsteps headed back toward the living room, but then stopped. I held my breath, crouched behind the granite countertop like I was taking cover from sniper fire. "Did you hear something?" Rachel asked, voice suddenly alert. "Like what?" the man responded. "I thought I heard the front door. Frank's not supposed to be back for weeks, but—" Her voice trailed off with concern. "Want me to check?" the stranger offered. "No, it's probably just the neighbor's dog. Mr. Peterson lets him run loose sometimes." At crisis averted, I waited until I heard them settle back on the couch before slowly rising and positioning myself where I could see into the living room through the kitchen pass-through. What I saw made my stomach drop. Rachel was curled up against the stranger on my couch, wearing the silk pajamas I'd bought her for Christmas. His arm was around her shoulders, fingers playing with her hair. They looked comfortable together, natural, like they'd done this dozens of times before. I raised my phone carefully, angling it to capture video through the opening. But just as I started recording, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. The notification sound seemed to echo through the house like a gunshot. Both of them froze. "What was that?" Rachel sat up straight, looking directly toward the kitchen. "Sounded like a phone," the man said, suddenly tense. I dropped below the counter again, frantically switching my phone to silent mode. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure they could hear it from the living room. "I'm gonna check the house," the man announced. I heard his boots hitting the floor, standing up. Trapped. If he came into the kitchen, I was caught. No way to explain hiding behind my own kitchen island at 6 a.m. with a phone full of recordings. I looked around desperately for an escape route or hiding spot. The pantry. It was right behind me, door slightly ajar. I could slip inside if I moved fast and quiet enough. But military boots or not, one creaky floorboard would expose everything. I took a calculated risk and slipped into the pantry just as heavy footsteps entered the kitchen. Through the crack in the door, I watched this stranger, who apparently knew my house layout well enough to walk around confidently, check the back door lock, and peer out the window toward the garage. "Nothing back here, babe." "Must have been the neighbors," he called out. "Come back here then. I want to show you something before you have to leave." Rachel's voice had that seductive edge again. I waited until his footsteps retreated before slowly emerging from the pantry. This was my chance to gather real evidence, but I had to move fast. I crept toward the front window and carefully photographed his license plate through the blinds. Colorado plate, JTW4429. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A child's car seat in the back of his truck. This bastard had kids of his own. I snuck back toward the living room, phone ready to record. What I saw and heard next would be burned into my memory forever. They were kissing passionately on the couch, and Rachel was saying things to him that she hadn't said to me in years. "I wish we didn't have to sneak around like this, Carl. I'm tired of pretending with Frank when he calls," she whispered between kisses. Carl. Now I had a name. And apparently she'd been pretending during our deployment calls, those conversations where she told me how much she missed me, how she was counting down the days until I came home. "After his next deployment, maybe you can finally file for divorce." "I'm ready to be with you full time," Carl replied, running his hands through her hair. My wife was planning to divorce me. They'd already discussed it. While I was risking my life overseas, serving my country, she was planning my replacement and the end of our marriage. I started recording video, capturing their intimate conversation and physical contact. But then I heard something that made my heart stop completely. The sound of a car door slamming outside. Katie was home early from her sleepover. All three of us heard it. Rachel shot up from the couch, panic in her eyes. "Oh God, that's Katie!" She wasn't supposed to be back until noon. Shit, where can I go? Carl was scrambling to put his shirt back on. "Back door, quickly! Go through the yard to your truck!" Rachel was frantically adjusting her pajamas, trying to look normal. I had maybe 30 seconds before my daughter walked through that front door. If she saw me, she'd announce my presence immediately, and my cover would be blown before I could gather more evidence. But if Carl escaped, I might never get another chance to document this affair. The front door key turned in the lock. Katie's voice rang out, "Mom!" Mrs. Henderson brought me home early because Jenny got sick. I made a split-second decision and bolted for the basement stairs, taking them 3 at a time. From the basement, I could hear everything but remain hidden. Carl was apparently trapped somewhere between the back door and the living room when Katie entered. "Mom, whose boots are these by the couch?" Katie asked innocently. My heart stopped. Carl's work boots. He'd left evidence of his presence right in our living room, and my 9-year-old daughter had just discovered them. "Oh, those are Uncle Jim's. He stopped by to fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom," Rachel lied smoothly to our daughter. "Uncle Jim?" Rachel's brother lived in Phoenix and hadn't visited in 2 years. But Katie was young enough to accept the explanation. "Where is Uncle Jim?" "I want to say hi." Katie's excited voice carried down to the basement. "He just left, sweetheart." "Maybe next time," Rachel said, and I could hear the strain in her voice as she tried to maintain the lie while probably figuring out how to get Carl out of the house unseen. From my position at the bottom of the basement stairs, I heard the back door quietly open and close. Carl had escaped, but not before I'd gathered enough evidence to confirm what I'd suspected. This wasn't a one-time mistake or moment of weakness. This was a calculated, ongoing affair with future plans that included ending our marriage. I waited in that basement for another hour, listening to Rachel make breakfast for Katie and act like the perfect mother, all while knowing she'd just been planning to destroy our family. The normalcy of their conversation, Katie chattering about her sleepover, Rachel asking about homework, felt surreal after what I'd just witnessed. When I finally heard Katie turn on the TV upstairs and Rachel retreat to her bedroom, I quietly slipped out through the basement's exterior entrance, a feature I'd insisted on installing for emergency purposes during my first deployment. Military paranoia had just saved my reconnaissance mission. I drove to a 24-hour diner 6 blocks away to process what I'd learned and plan my next move. License plate JTW4429 belonged to Carl somebody who worked night shifts at some kind of plant, had kids of his own, and was planning a future with my wife. I needed more intelligence before making any tactical decisions. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Good morning, honey. Katie and I are having a lazy Saturday. Missing you so much. Only 4 more weeks until you're home." The casual deception in that message, sent less than 2 hours after she'd been making out with another man on our couch, was breathtaking. I stared at those heart emojis while my coffee grew cold, understanding for the first time that I'd been living with a stranger. I called my buddy Torres from my old unit, now working private security in Denver. "Frank, thought you were still overseas, man. What's up?" "Need a favor, Miguel. I'm back early and need someone to run a Colorado plate for me. Quietly. Everything okay? Just need to verify some intel. Can you help?" 20 minutes later, Torres called back. "JTW4429 is registered to Carl Brennan, 34, works at the Coors plant in Golden. Lives at 1247 Maple Street in Lakewood. Got 2 kids, divorced last year. Clean record except for a DUI in 2019. Divorced. So Carl was free to pursue my wife while I was overseas defending freedom. A Coors plant worker. Explained the night shifts and weekend availability. Lakewood was only 15 minutes from our house. I spent the rest of Saturday conducting surveillance from a distance. I parked across from Carl's address and watched him arrive home around noon, still wearing the same flannel shirt from my house. His truck had kids' toys scattered in the yard. A bike, soccer ball, swing set. Normal family stuff, except Daddy was destroying someone else's family on weekends. Around 3 p.m., a silver Honda pulled up. A woman in her 30s got out with 2 young kids, maybe 6 and 8 years old. His ex-wife dropping off the children for his custody weekend. The irony was crushing. Here was a father getting his precious time with his kids, while actively helping to break up another child's home. I followed them to Chuck E. Cheese, where Carl played the devoted dad role perfectly. Watching him help his daughter with skee ball while knowing he'd had his hands on my wife that morning made me physically sick. But I needed more evidence, more intelligence about their relationship timeline. Sunday, I took a huge risk and returned to my own house. Rachel's car was gone, probably at the hospital for her shift, and Katie was at my mother-in-law's for the day, our usual Sunday arrangement. This was my chance to search for evidence without interruption. I had maybe 3 hours before Rachel returned. In our bedroom, I started with her dresser drawers, looking for anything unusual. Hidden beneath her work scrubs, I found a prepaid cell phone I'd never seen before. My hands shook as I powered it on. The text history made me nauseous. Months of messages with Carl Harthart dating back to January, right after my last deployment started. Explicit photos, romantic messages, detailed plans for their weekend encounters. They'd been meeting every Saturday I was deployed, sometimes Sundays too when Katie was at Grandma's. One message thread particularly gutted me. "Carl, when are you going to tell Frank it's over?" Rachel, "After his next deployment. I need to be smart about this. He controls all our finances and I need time to prepare." Carl, "I'm tired of sharing you. I want you to be mine completely." Rachel, "Soon, baby. I promise. Just let me handle this right. I know how to manage Frank." Manage Frank, like I was some obstacle to work around rather than her husband of 11 years, the father of her child, the man who'd sacrificed everything for her comfort and security. I photographed every message, every photo, every piece of evidence. But then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Rachel's car pulling into the driveway. She was home 3 hours early. I was trapped in our bedroom with her secret phone in my hands, years of evidence displayed on the screen. No time to put everything back exactly as I'd found it. If she came upstairs and caught me with that phone, my entire investigation would be blown and she'd destroy all evidence immediately. Her keys jingled in the front door. Footsteps in the hallway. "Frank, are you home early?" Rachel called out, her voice getting closer to the stairs. My heart hammered against my ribs. She'd seen something, maybe my rental car in the driveway, maybe something I'd disturbed in my search. I had 30 seconds to hide all evidence and get out of that bedroom before she came upstairs and found me rifling through her secrets. I quickly powered down the phone and shoved it back under her scrubs, praying I'd positioned it exactly right. Her footsteps were on the stairs now. The master bedroom had only one exit, right past where she was coming up. I was trapped. Then I remembered the walk-in closet had a small window that opened onto the roof over our garage. During my last home leave, I'd reinforced that roof for a potential solar panel installation. If I could get out there and drop down, "Frank, I saw a car that looked like yours." Rachel's voice was right outside the bedroom door. I slipped into the closet just as the bedroom door opened. Through the crack, I watched my wife of 11 years scan the room suspiciously. She walked directly to her dresser and checked her top drawer, exactly where I'd found the phone. Smart girl. She knew someone had been searching. The closet window opened silently, another modification I'd made for emergency egress. Military habits saving me again. I squeezed through and crawled across the garage roof, then dropped down behind our neighbor's fence. Mrs. Patterson's German Shepherd barked once, but I'd been sneaking past him for years when coming home late from base. I circled back to retrieve my rental car 3 blocks away, heart still pounding from the close call. But I'd gotten what I needed. Months of evidence proving systematic adultery and Rachel's planned financial devastation of our marriage. Back at the diner, I organized my intelligence. Photos of text messages, Carl's personal information, timeline of their affair, evidence of premeditation. This wasn't going to be an emotional confrontation. This was going to be a tactical operation with clear objectives. I called attorney Rebecca Morrison, who'd handled several divorces for guys in my unit. "Rebecca, it's Frank Garrison. I need an emergency consultation. I've discovered extensive evidence of adultery, and I need to know how to protect myself legally." "How extensive?" "Months of documented evidence. Photos, text messages, surveillance footage, and evidence she's planning to financially destroy me in divorce proceedings. Can you be in my office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.? Bring everything." Monday morning, Rebecca reviewed my evidence with the thoroughness of a military briefing. "This is bulletproof, Frank. Colorado is a no-fault state, but adultery can definitely impact asset division and custody arrangements. With this level of documentation, she won't have much leverage. What's my next move?" "We file immediately. I'll arrange for her to be served at the hospital, public place, witnesses, professional environment. Less chance of dramatic scenes. How do you want to handle the confrontation?" "I want her to know I've been watching. I want her to understand that every lie, every deception, every moment of betrayal has been documented. Revenge or justice?" "Justice. But I want her to know that underestimating a Special Forces engineer was her biggest mistake." Tuesday afternoon, I positioned myself in the hospital parking garage where Rachel would find me after being served with divorce papers. I'd been tracking her schedule for days. She always left through the south exit at 3:45 p.m. At 3:47, she burst through the doors, divorce papers clutched in her hand, eyes scanning frantically until she spotted me leaning against her car. "Frank, what the hell is this?" She waved the legal documents like a weapon. "It's called evidence, Rachel. Months of it." I held up my phone displaying one of her text conversations with Carl. "Tell me, how exactly were you planning to manage me?" Her face went white as she recognized her own words on my screen. When did you... She was stuttering, the confident woman who'd been planning my destruction suddenly speechless. "Saturday morning. I came home early and heard you and Carl making plans for our divorce. Interesting breakfast conversation." "You were in the house?" Panic flickered in her eyes as she realized the scope of what I'd witnessed. "I was in my house, watching my wife commit adultery with a Coors plant worker who has his own kids but apparently enjoys destroying other families on weekends. Frank, please, we can work this out. It's not what you think." I pulled out a folder thick with printed evidence. Text messages going back to January. Photos you sent him. Your detailed plans to take half of everything I've built while I was serving my country overseas. Which part isn't what I think? "You don't understand. You're never here. I've been lonely for years while you choose the military over your family. I chose to serve my country so you and Katie could have the best life possible. I sent home every penny I could spare. I called you every day I was allowed. And you were planning to destroy everything we built while pretending to love me. I do love you, Frank, but I'm in love with him. That confession hung in the air between us like smoke from an explosion. At least she was finally being honest. Then you'll be happy to know Carl's ex-wife has been served with the same evidence today. Turns out custody agreements have morality clauses. His weekend daddy time just got a lot more complicated. Rachel's face crumpled as the full scope of consequences hit her. You contacted his ex-wife? Jennifer Brennan was very interested to learn why her children's father was canceling his weekend visits to spend time with a married woman. Apparently, Carl told her he was working overtime to pay child support. Frank, please. Think about Katie. Don't destroy our family over this. I didn't destroy our family, Rachel. You did. Every Saturday morning for 4 months while I was overseas. You destroyed it with detailed planning and spreadsheets. I pulled out printed copies of her organizational charts. Yes, she'd actually made Excel spreadsheets tracking her lies. Those are private. Nothing in my house is private from me. I built that house. I pay for everything in it, including the secret phone you've been using to coordinate your affair. The fight went out of her then. She slumped against her car, finally understanding that her careful deception had been completely exposed. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now you sign the divorce papers. Colorado law is clear. Documented adultery affects asset division. You get minimal alimony. I keep the house and primary custody of Katie. Carl can explain to his kids why Daddy can't see them as often anymore. You can't take Katie from me. I'm not taking her. But family court judges don't favor parents who destabilize children's homes for extramarital affairs. Katie stays in her school, her neighborhood, with her deployed father who actually prioritizes her welfare. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Rachel received 20% of our assets instead of the 50% she'd planned to take. She moved into a small apartment across town, working extra shifts to afford the legal fees and her new lifestyle. Carl lost his weekend custody visits for 6 months due to moral turpitude violations. His ex-wife Jennifer and I actually became friends through our shared experience. Turns out Carl had been lying to everyone, claiming he was working overtime when he was actually destroying 2 families. The most satisfying consequence was completely unplanned. Carl's night shift supervisor at Coors was Jennifer's brother-in-law. When the affair became public record through divorce proceedings, Carl found himself transferred to the worst shifts and eventually laid off during restructuring. Katie adapted better than I expected. Kids are resilient, and honestly, she'd barely seen Rachel on weekends anyway due to the affair schedule. We established a routine where Rachel gets her every other weekend and Wednesday dinners, supervised initially due to court recommendations. I took early retirement from active duty and accepted a civilian engineering position with the Army Corps in Denver. No more deployments, no more months away from my daughter. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rachel's affair had actually given me the push I needed to prioritize family over military career advancement. A year later, I started dating Maria, a teacher at Katie's school who'd been divorced herself. She understood the complexity of blended families and the importance of honest communication. No secret phones, no fictional storylines, no elaborate deceptions. Maria had been through her own betrayal experience, so she appreciated a partner who valued transparency. Our relationship developed slowly, built on actual compatibility rather than dramatic passion or forbidden excitement. The strangest epilogue came 18 months later. Carl contacted me through LinkedIn, wanting to clear the air and apologize. Apparently, his life had completely fallen apart after the affairs were exposed. He'd lost his job, his custody arrangement, and his relationship with Rachel ended when the secrecy and excitement wore off. I never meant for it to go so far, he wrote. I was going through a bad divorce and Rachel seemed lonely. It just spiraled out of control. I didn't respond. Some apologies are too little, too late, and some people need to live with the consequences of their choices without absolution from the people they've wronged. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't about Rachel's capacity for deception. It was about my own willingness to ignore warning signs because I wanted to believe in something that wasn't real. Military service had taught me to trust my instincts in dangerous situations, but I'd ignored those same instincts at home because I was afraid of what they might reveal. Rachel had been emotionally absent for months before the affair started. Our conversations had become superficial, our physical intimacy practically non-existent. I'd attributed it to deployment stress and normal marriage challenges, but the truth was that she'd already checked out of our relationship long before Carl appeared. The difference between Rachel and Maria was stark. With Rachel, I'd been performing the role of loving husband while she performed the role of faithful wife. With Maria, we were actually building something real together. Difficult conversations, genuine compatibility, shared values about family and honesty.